Today, we're going to begin a 5-part podcast series for small businesses on how to be a disruptor. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, when you start a small business, one of the biggest problems that you as a small business operator have is finding your niche, finding something that other people are going to latch onto. And being a disruptor is going to scale you and going to accelerate you. Now, being a disruptor is risky, but the payoff is much more than just trying to copy someone else's scheme or trying to release a product or trying to release something that's casual, that's not disruptive. And we're talking about disruptive innovation in today's podcast and for the next 5 podcasts. It's a 5-part series. I'm doing it to kind of tell you that, this is the same blueprint I'm using to be a disruptor in my field. And you'll have more information about the applications and the ability to create web apps and web design and all those kinds of things in a new platform and a new service that I've been creating for quite some time. But I'm following this disruptive. In fact, the face of what that's going to look like has changed many, many times over. And so we're going to do this 5-part series. I'm going to record it all once, and I'm going to drop it periodically as part of this podcast, and I hope that you enjoy it. Again, if you haven't had the opportunity to like, comment, share, do all that, it's loyal podcast listeners just like you who are encouraging growth to this podcast and a podcast similar like it. Not just like, comment, and share, but go ahead, send this series to someone who you know is starting a small business, has a small business, is having a business that's not very successful, is trying to release a brand, trying to release clothing, trying to release a product, anything that they have this desire to pursue, but they're running into hurdles and they're running into concerns. And this series is going to kind of teach you and train you to be a disruptor, to be able to go into any industry, transform it, and become known. Some big disruptors that you may or may not know. Biggest one, Netflix, Dropbox, Airbnb, and all of those are going to be examples that we're going to cover in this 5 podcast series. So stay tuned, share this with a friend. You know they need it. If nothing else, hey, encourage yourself, uplift yourself with this content. So stay tuned, don't go anywhere, subscribe. This isn't just for small business and entrepreneurs, but being a disruptor starts at the small business level. We're going to start here with episode 1, Embracing the Disruptor Mindset. Why challenging the status quo matters. Last podcast, we discussed why, and everything you should do should be centered around the why. Not the how, not the what, but the why you do what you do. And if you don't have a vision statement and a purpose, not just a vision statement, but a purpose, a driving reason for getting up in the morning, then you're not going to be able to be a disruptor. So I encourage you to discover that why, and encourage you to also begin to challenge the status quo. So are you ready to challenge the status quo and shake up your industry? In this episode, we'll lay the groundwork for what it means to be a disruptor in business. Being a disruptor isn't just a buzzword, it's a mindset and strategy that can propel a small business to a new heights or leave complacent competitors in the dust. Your competitors generally won't change something that works. If you're a disruptor, you're going to start anticipating changes in adding AI, all those kinds of things that people are doing now to disrupt their industries. You're going to be able to, if you take this mindset, be able to do so in future planning, 5-10 years down the line. You're going to be able to know what's coming up and make those changes. So today we'll explore why embracing the disruptor mindset is crucial for entrepreneurs, small business owners, and larger businesses, especially if you feel your business is stagnant or your business is receding because of the recession or all those kinds of things. Maybe you're getting hit by the tariffs a lot. I don't know. Maybe this is a podcast that you can use, this next 5 series, to disrupt your concept of how you run your business. And this is going to change everything. Now, that just doesn't work for small businesses. It works for everyone who has a goal. If you have a goal-oriented mindset, if you're a brand, if you're a nonprofit, whatever it is, being a disruptor in the comparison of your field is not about just being different to be different, but is finding the pain points and becoming a disruptor in solving those pain points. pain points. So we'll define disruptive innovation and discuss why it's disruptive or be disrupted in today's world. We'll also share inspiring examples of game changers who dared to do things differently. By the end, you'll see why challenging the status quo isn't just risky, but it's also necessary. So let's define disruptor and disruptive innovation. First, let's clarify what a business disruptor is. Harvard Business School professor Clayton Christensen, who coined the theory of disruptive innovation, described it as a process whereby a smaller company with fewer resources is able to successfully challenge established incumbent businesses. In practical terms, a disruptor is an upstart that finds a new or better way to serve customers, often starting small but eventually shaking up and overtaking existing players. A hallmark of disruptive companies, Christensen notes, is that they often start by targeting overlooked or undiscovered customer segments with a simpler, cheaper, or more convenient offering. In the early stages, the product or service might even seem inferior to what big companies offer. Think of early Netflix only offering older movies by mail, which initially appealed only to movie buffs who didn't care about new releases, but over time, disruptors improve their offerings, move up market, and add the features mainstream customers want. Eventually, the incumbent businesses find that the one inferior alternative has become the preferred choice. As Christensen vividly illustrated, all of a sudden, there is no reason to have Blockbuster anymore. Once Netflix perfected online streaming, in fact, Netflix so thoroughly disrupted Blockbuster's video rental business that Blockbuster and Family Video all went bankrupt. And tellingly, Blockbuster even passed up an opportunity to buy Netflix for just $50 million in 2000. And because they didn't adopt the disruptive mindset, they thought their business was going to be around for a while and it's good to go. And that's kind of like a 1990s, a 2000s, a 1980s, 1970s kind of concept that once you build a business and it's solid, it'll be there for years to come. And that might be true for some businesses, but with the disruptive powers of artificial intelligence and neural networking, we're discovering that pretty much any industry's foundation is going to be abruptly shaken. And that means that no solid company that doesn't adopt similar ideology that we're talking about in this podcast is going to be safe from losing profit and safe from eventual decline into nothingness. And this is because usually, as a business, you discover that your customers have moved on to something that's easier or cheaper, or someone has built a disruptive technology or a disruptive field. And, just because we say technology, like technology is utilized in every single industry. So at the heart and the base, technology is how everything really runs. You literally can't run a business without technology. You can't accept credit cards without technology. You can't run a business banking account without technology. I mean, you could be archaic and you could, I don't know, I'm saying archaic, but you could be old school and you could have, your journal entries and you can have different books of entry and you could actually, they're physical books that you're marking up and that's how you're doing your research. But you're going to find that technology is a fundamental concept from producing a product, designing it, to manufacturing it, to delivering it. Technology is interweaved everywhere. And that's just the physical products. That's also in retail and e-commerce and online. The internet is complete technology. Your phone, all those kinds of things. So every industry literally is no longer safe. There isn't a safe industry left. I mean, utilities might be safe-ish, but even that's going to be challenged as AI begins to be able to reason and be able to do scientific research and be able to learn from scientists. Scientists are going to be able to make this larger leaps, and we're eventually going to have homemade fusion reactors, all those kinds of things, because it may seem so far-fetched, but look at Tesla. They're very, very close to perfecting driving unsupervised with an AI model, and it's all powered by AI. And it's just training and hours of training and hours of training. And yes, it's not perfect, as you'll see many videos that say it's not perfect, but the impossible self-driving car that you read about only in like fiction novels is literally we're living in today. Like literally, I can use something called adaptive cruise control on the freeway, and it's smart enough to stop when it needs to stop. It knows the car is coming up, and for me, it's a safety technology because sometimes it will react faster than me. Now, not usually, because still the technology has a little bit of delay because it hasn't yet adopted real-time processing. Like, say, the Apple Vision Pro, which has 2 chips. One chip is the normal traditional processor, but they changed the status quo and introduced a real-time processor, a dedicated chip to process all of those sensory inputs to make it real-time or within 10 milliseconds. And that technology, if that moved over to a Tesla, you'd be able to have faster reacting artificial intelligence. And I mean, it would probably make Tesla's a little bit more expensive because you'd probably have to have multiple chips and all those kinds of things. But self-driving cars and self-flying automobiles are we're on the precipice of this, all because of artificial intelligence. And if we go back to Blockbuster, Netflix started streaming, and of course it started the streaming wars. And Netflix started all this, and then, Blockbuster lost an opportunity to consume a disruptor. Some companies do this nefariously where they'll buy a disruptor and then close them down because they're fundamentally changing the industry. Or other smarter ones will buy a small business, a disruptor business, pay a little bit upfront for it, and then incorporate it into their business strategy, or even buy the entire leadership and everyone involved and make them a part of the company as a separate line of business, challenging another line of business. I'm very excited to talk all about that in these podcasts. So not every innovative business is a disruptor in the strictest sense. Okay, for example, Uber is often labeled disruptive, but Christensen argued Uber didn't follow the classic pattern of targeting overlooked markets first. Semantics aside, disruption today has become synonymous with bold innovation and game-changing business models. As one tech writer put it, we live in an era of disruption, from Amazon to Apple, from Uber to countless startups. Industries, ChatGPT, industries are being transformed at a staggering rate. For entrepreneurs and small businesses, the key takeaway is that disruption is about creating significant change that resets customer expectations. It's doing something in a way that makes people say, why wasn't it always done this way? One of the fundamental concepts of the Universe platform is that any business can have technology that used to be far out of their range. For instance, it is my goal to give every single person that's on our platform the ability to have a luxury brand experience. And this is what I mean. So you a brand, right? You want to execute in such a way where you can keep your brand and your information and tell your story. It used to cost hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars to use these kinds of technologies, to be able to implement these technologies, and the learning curve on adding simple emails or account management. We'll do account management. The coding work to add account management across multiple systems is just astronomical. And the Universe platform does this. It has its own accounts API, and it has all these features in it that are designed to solve all of these pain points in such a way to give small business entrepreneurs, new businesses, and even medium-sized businesses, even corporations, the ability to take this multi-million-dollar spend in application development, toss it out the window, and use something like this. Telling your story. Like, I believe everyone has a purpose. Everyone has a God-given, custom-tailored purpose that only you can accomplish. And I believe that I can help offer you those tools to accomplish your purpose. And it's the same tools that I use to help accomplish my purpose. And it's not like I'm not using my own technology. It's far from it. Because the companies that do that, like, for instance, if you used to go to a Microsoft store, you wouldn't see purchases being done on tab Microsoft Surfaces. You'd see them being done on Apple, iMacs, and iPads. And it's like, wait a second. You offer Microsoft PCs and Microsoft Surfaces and Microsoft branded stuff, but your store is using Apple products? There was a car company, and I wish I could remember the car company's name. But the consultant walked into the building and he made a note of all the cars parked in the parking lot. There were Fords, there were Volkswagens, there were, BMWs, there were, whatever, was at the time, right? And so they started asking the consultant, we're seeing a decline and we're seeing a problem. And the consultant just said simply, your employees don't believe in your product. Now, some companies will be like, well, if you're not using our product, you're fired. No. It's a gauge if your employees trust your product, if your employees value your product. If your employees don't use your product, it's a telltale sign that your product, it doesn't resonate with them, isn't meaningful to them, and they can't be invested into it because they can find something cheaper or better somewhere else. And that's a telltale sign that a company, a corporation, etc., nonprofit, whatever it is dying, is because their employees can't buy into it. It's a really, really good important lesson, because in just under a couple years, under 10 years, they were bankrupt and they were no more. Here's why you should care about being a disruptor. Because in today's rapidly changing business landscape, marketplace, from one hand to another hand, from one tech company to a small business that becomes a tech company, and becomes a huge company, and back and forth, standing still means falling behind. If you're stagnant, if you're standing still in that area, you're becoming contented. And if you just don't move, don't grow, don't expand, you're falling behind. The hard truth is that if you don't disrupt, if you cling to your business as usual, someone else will come along and do it for you. I've seen this many, 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 many times. I have a lot of helpful friends and people that offer advice, and I've worked for some corporations and I work for some large nonprofits, and I've learned and gleaned a lot. But during my entire experience, with the exception of one, maybe two people that were able to offer mentor-like advice, that were able to help me go over hurdles, for the most part, I've had to climb those hurdles myself. And that sucks. And I don't want you to experience those hurdles. I don't want you to have those issues. So part of the Universe platform is not just challenging the status quo and offering you a revolutionary life, but offering you products and services that change your life. And to do so, to be that disruptive influence, don't think disruption is a bad thing, okay? Disruption is about, here's your normal procedures, here's a normal way things are done, and finding, it can be much faster, better, more efficient if you skip that. And maybe new technology has happened, which is the whole case of the universe, is new technology has happened that hasn't been adopted anywhere. And I started using it and exploring it, and I was able to develop new concepts and cutting edge ideas and theories that some here or there might be experimenting with, and I'm able to hugely transform just the entire development space with these new concepts. Now, it's probably going to take me a while before I launch the whole application artisan program, which is my program designed for developers to get access to the code and expand the code and build their own apps in the ecosystem. But that's where I'm going. All of my apps are built modularly and generically. And so I build this system that helps me build the app, and then I use the common system to build my variation of that app. And that's not always perfect, because some of my apps are in different variations of the framework and ecosystem, and they're going to be all brought together over the next couple of weeks to launch this product and service. And I might launch a couple products and services so that depending on your business type, you can still integrate with the universe and you can still offer a world-class experience to your customers. But if I chose to develop the way everyone else was developing, when I started developing, I did research, right? I worked for a corporation, and they were completely enveloped in the Microsoft stack. And I discovered that stack is good in some areas, but it's also bad in rapid development areas. And this was at the time. The stack may have changed and may have been improved. And so I did some research and I was like, well, everyone's using this thing and they say it's faster and better. And so I started to build the universe framework in this component. And then I discovered that it was really bad. And I discovered that it was just all over the place and the information available and there was no consistency. Is this an experience as a developer that I want? Because it's making my development, every time I make a change, I have to like rewrite large segments of code and it takes months. And I'd rather spend months developing the framework that's just this open-ended component that changes and transforms the ability for developers to code and be able to make changes quickly. Because it changes your mindset, it changes how you make these changes, and it really promotes an upgraded experience. If I didn't disrupt those concepts, didn't change how they were, I wouldn't be able to design or develop and release something that's literally, I believe, game-changing. Not that it's new technology, but it's a new way to think about technology, a new way to adapt to technology. And I can provide it so that everyday people can build their own applications and all those kinds of things with just a minimal amount of understanding of code. If I have to make a change, it only takes me a day to make that change and push it to production. As opposed to in these other stacks, I might have to fundamentally redefine and redesign things because I used considered code standard practices and found that they were lacking. And then I have to redesign everything and then I break things down the line and it's just this horrible experience. And I wouldn't be able to rush things to production. It would take months before I'd have a feature update or something, a bug fix, those kinds of things, depending on what it is. It just, in comparison to this new framework I designed, which I can, fix something fast. Just because it's just a whole new way of thinking for my industry that, disrupts the ability for me to have to do things a standard business procedural way into a way where I disrupted it and I'm still doing some cool modern things, but I'm also taking lessons from older business. It's like being a Renaissance man. Dr. Rod Parsley says that about himself all the time. He's a Renaissance man. He looks forward into the future, but he also brings the relevant moral and ethical convictions of the past together. And you have to do the same thing in business. It's not that you're ignoring business standards. You're finding out why they happen, and you're figuring out how to make them better, and you're figuring out the pain points customers have and why they exist, and you're being able to propel and accelerate things just because you're disrupting that concept. CEO John Chambers put it bluntly. If you're not a disruptor, you will be disrupted. In other words, complacency can be fatal. History is littered with examples of giants that failed to adapt. Kodak missed the digital photography wave. Nokia fell behind in smartphones. Blockbuster, as we saw, ignored streaming. These are huge companies, but the principle applies to businesses of all size. As innovation lecturer Paul Earle warns established companies, it's not a choice. Their entire existence is at risk. If they don't start thinking like disruptors, the same goes for a scrappy small business or startup. Embracing change is a matter of survival, of thriving. We either dare to disrupt or we will eventually be disrupted by others. If you're a small business, you can be disrupted out of existence, like that. Being a disruptor keeps your business relevant and resilient in a world of constant changes. It means proactively finding better ways to serve your customers rather than waiting until a competitor forces you to change. As one article noticed, while being a disruptor can be risky, being disrupted by new business is even worse. It's like you're successful here and then all of a sudden a small business outperforms you and they get known and you lose out on all that potential. Or worse, you snap out of existence. When you're the disruptor, you set the terms of change when you're on the receiving end. It's like, in my opinion, I'm going to change it. A good defense is a great offense. If you want to defend your position in a game, but if you're not forward momentum and you're not getting points on the board, or if you're on a chessboard and you're just defending your pieces and the other person is disrupting the game by taking your pieces and they have more material points, you're going to discover that game is going to quickly not end up in your favor. Because defense alone is not the way to go. A combination of defending your pieces as they advance and move forward, that's how you win major chess games. That and disruptive moves that nobody thought about. But if you're playing against chess masters, well, you might always lose because they know they're aware of all the disruptive moves because there's only so many possible moves on the board. But in business, it's infinite possibilities. It's chess to an astronomical degree. You don't want to be playing catch up. You don't want to be playing, I'm building my business. Oh, I have to now add this. I now have to add this. I now have to support this. I now have to do this. You want to be on the building end instead of the receiving end. Disruption also often unlocks huge opportunities. They don't just take market share, they can grow the market or create entirely new markets by reaching people previously overlooked. Think of how Airbnb opened up a new market for home sharing, or how Tesla spurred demand on electrical vehicles. Being a disruptor can mean changing the game and reaping the rewards of being first, rather than fighting over scraps in an old game. If you find someone that is first and you can do something better and customers will love, and something that customers, like pain point customers have, and you can solve that and do the business, you'll be more successful than the first business. And that's just based off standards. That's like a cheat code in business that people have discovered. And that's why a lot of businesses are like, well, let me replicate this business. And this might be a pain point, but it's not enough of a pain point for enough of the customers for it to catapult your business. Mindset. Let's challenge the status quo. At its core, being a disruptor is as much a mindset as it is a business strategy. Disruptors question everything. They're the people who ask, what if? And why not? When everyone else is comfortable with the way things are, you don't get disruption. Author Travis Bradberry said it well, influential people are never satisfied with the status quo. They're the ones who constantly ask, what if and why not? They're not afraid to challenge conventional wisdom, and they don't disrupt things for the sake of being disruptive. They do it to make things better. This mindset, a mix of curiosity and courage and optimism that things can be better, is the starting point for any disruptive innovation. It's not about change for its own sake, it's about meaningful improvement, that revolutionary life, being able to transform someone's life with revolutionary ideas. That's how I want to operate, and that's how I want my business to operate. It's improvement, but it's challenging the status quo. It's inspired with revolutionary ideas that literally spark revolution. The drive is to solve a problem or serve a need in a way that dramatically better than before, even if it means upending how things have always been done. Cultivating a disruptor mindset means embracing change and rejecting fear of the unknown. It requires a level of comfort with risk and uncertainty. As entrepreneurs, many of you already have that spark. After all, starting a business in itself is a break from the status quo of a stable paycheck. To go further and actively disrupt an industry, you double down on the daring spirit. One common trait among disruptors is a willingness to think big and imagine a different future. They don't ask, how can we incrementally improve? Remember my second business idea? It's not incremental improvements, it's huge changes. As much as, how can we completely reimagine this? For example, instead of a slightly better taxi dispatch service, Uber envisioned a world where hailing a ride is as easy as tapping your phone, and despite not fitting Christensen's strict model, Uber undeniably changed consumer expectations. Disruptions often have a vision that others initially find crazy or unrealistic, until they succeed. Another aspect of the disruptor mindset is resilience and confidence in your own path. Disruptors inevitably face doubters. You might be told your idea won't work or isn't what customers are used to. But as one disruptor CEO advised, sometimes competition is in the mirror when you wake up every day. In other words, let them be in your backside, don't care about it, and keep moving forward. Meaning your biggest challenge isn't yourself. It's not external rivalry. Don't stand in your own way by doubting your vision too early. Keep an eye on your competitors for sure, but you could be your biggest enemy. Don't let your competition and people you get advice from dictate your journey. True disruptors follow their convictions rather than copying what others are doing. David versus Goliath story. Netflix versus Blockbuster. In the late 1900s, Blockbuster was the Goliath of video rental, and thousands of stores. Netflix was a tiny startup mailing DVDs to a niche group of customers. It would have been easy for Netflix founders to think, we can't possibly challenge Blockbuster. But they had a disruptive vision, a subscription model with no late fees, and later, streaming video on demand. And I'll be honest, I had Netflix back in the DVD days. 4 DVDs, I did the math, so you get 4 DVDs or whatever it is, and you'd send them back, and then you can pick new ones and back and forth. And literally was an on-demand version of Blockbuster, but so much cheaper at the end of it. No late fees, no nothing. And so Netflix started by serving movie enthusiasts who were ignored by Blockbuster's focus on new releases. Blockbuster's leadership dismissed Netflix as an inconsequential player. Famously, they laughed Netflix out of the room when Reed Hastings, Netflix's CEO, proposed a partnership. And this is when Blockbuster could have purchased Netflix for a mere $50 million. We know how that turned out. Netflix's new model completely reinvented how we consume entertainment. They started the streaming wars. And Blockbuster literally became a relic of the past. Blockbusters, family videos, etc. The story drives home that no incumbent built business, is too big to fail when faced with a well-executed disruptive idea. It also shares that disruptors often start by doing what incumbents won't. Like Netflix focusing on mail delivery and older titles, which Blockbuster didn't value, and then relentlessly pushing forward. We'll explore more examples in upcoming episodes, including stories of a small business and multiple that made it big by disrupting their industries. The key message for now is that any business, no matter how small, can be a disruptor. If it brings a fresh perspective and gutsy execution, as entrepreneur Heather Simmons said, those who disrupt their industries change consumer behavior, alter economics, and transform lives. A whole goal of the universe, to transform your life. That's a powerful legacy to aim for. The upshot, embrace the challenge. Being a disruptor isn't easy. It requires vision, courage, and a dash of contrarian thinking, but it's also immensely rewarding. Disruptors redefine what's possible and often build intensely loyal customer bases because they offer something genuinely better. Importantly, adopting a disruptor mindset doesn't mean you must invent some ultra high-tech product or have billion-dollar funding. It can be as simple as finding a smarter process in a traditional industry. We'll hear examples of that too. Meaningful innovation doesn't always require starting from scratch. Sometimes it's about recombining existing ideas in a bold new way. Sounds like the Universe platform. And not just that, sometimes it leads to invention on its own. In other words, you can disrupt by tweaking and reimagining what's already out there. And that is what I've been doing for the past 14 years. I'm so excited. Remember, this introduction to the disruption series, it's not going to be a one-time overnight change, but it's a continuous mindset of challenging yourself and your business to improve. We'll talk later in the series about sustaining innovation and how to start that innovation process, how to start the disruptor process, how to sustain it, all those kinds of things, because even disruptors can themselves get disrupted if they become complacent. As we venture into the next episodes, keep an open mind and start looking at your own business or industry with fresh eyes. What rules have you assumed are unchangeable? What frustrations do customers have that everyone else ignores? That's where opportunity lives. In the famous words often attributed to Gandhi and beloved by innovators everywhere, be the change you wish to see in the world. And in business, be the change before someone else changes things for you. Stay tuned, episode 2, where we'll dive into how to spot disruptive opportunities and generate game-changing ideas. If episode 1 was about the why of Disruption episode 2 is more about the how. Remember, we start with why and how to find that golden idea that could transform your business and maybe your life. So get ready to think differently and scout the opportunities hiding in plain sight. Again, if you haven't had a chance, like, comment, share. Tell someone about this series. Let them know that they can be encouraged and they can be uplifted and they can get new insights and change their mindset so they can be a disruptor and an influence and catapult from being a small business that may only exist for 5 years. A typical small business dies after 5 years. If you have this mindset, you can challenge it. You can have failures and then lead to successes. And you can grow and expand and you can make a multi-million-dollar empire just by changing the status quo. Before we close this podcast, I want to say a prayer for you. Lord, I thank you for everyone's opportunity to be creative. That spark of life that you gave all of us to do. And that purpose, that vision that you've inspired all of us to accomplish. I thank you for that, Lord. And I pray right now for everyone tuning in, Lord God, that you give them peace as they move forward in faith and take that next step, Lord God, to pursue that vision, that purpose that you put in their heart, Lord God. And I pray that you'll give them the proper mindset and give them spiritual intuition, wisdom, Sophia, phronesis, all the anointings, Lord God. Allow wisdom and understanding to be imparted, wisdom to know when to disrupt and when not to, and when to grow, when to expand, and when to change and fundamentally rethink their preconceptions. I pray, Lord God, that you be with them in all they do. I pray this in Jesus' mighty name. Amen. If you haven't already had a chance, like, comment, share, subscribe, and take a moment. Share this with an entrepreneur, small business, someone who knows exploring alternative options and trying to break out of the status quo. Okay, great. Give them the ability to use this mindset. Send them this podcast. We'll release, this is a 5-part series, so look forward to it. Send them part 1, and sky's the limit. I look forward to seeing what you disrupt, and I also look forward to sharing you what I'm doing to disrupt. This is exciting.